What if everything you've been trying to change in your life has been happening in the wrong reality? Not because you're not trying hard enough, not because you're not worthy of change, but because you've been observing the version of reality that reflects your current state, not the one you actually want to live in. Most people spend their entire lives staring at the mirror of reality, not realizing that the mirror doesn't change first. They do. That's the paradox. You think you need to see it before you can believe it, but the truth is reversed. You have to believe it before you can ever see it. And the uncomfortable truth is that if you're still waiting for signs, proof, and permission, you're observing the wrong version of your world. There's a difference between the reality that's unfolding in front of your eyes and the one that's waiting behind the curtain of your current focus. Imagine standing in a room with dozens of doors. Every door leads to a different version of your life. Some lead to more of the same, others lead to radical transformation. But here's the secret most people never grasp. You can't walk through a door you're not even looking at. Your mind is a spotlight, and wherever that beam goes, your entire world seems to follow. If right now your spotlight is fixed on lack, on frustration, on waiting for something to happen, the only doors you'll ever notice are the ones that lead to more waiting, more frustration, more lack. The world won't change just because you want it to. It changes because you shift your point of observation, and that's where everything begins. Most people believe they're reacting to reality, but what they don't see is that reality is actually reacting to them. It's subtle, it's quiet, and because it doesn't shout, it gets missed. You look at your circumstances and think, this is the way things are. But your circumstances are just reflections, old signals bouncing back from past states of being. What you're living right now isn't new information. It's the echo of what you've been focusing on, feeling, and believing. Think of it like tuning into a radio station. If you're on a frequency that plays old songs, you can't demand it to play something new while staying on the same station. You have to change the frequency first. And here's where the magic happens. Most people stare at the radio, yell at it, blame it, or get discouraged, instead of simply reaching out and turning the dial. Now, that dial is your state of consciousness. It's your inner stance, your beliefs, your self-talk, your expectations, and your focus. And here's a truth that can change everything. Reality is malleable. It's flexible. It isn't a fixed, solid thing. It's more like wet clay responding to the pressure of your inner world. But if you don't pick up the tools of focus and belief, that clay hardens into patterns you don't even like. People often say, I'll believe it when I see it. But the real masters of creation know, I'll see it when I believe it. Belief isn't weak. It isn't blind faith. It's alignment with a reality that already exists but isn't visible from your current perspective. When you lock onto a new belief, not with desperate wanting, but with calm certainty, you begin to tilt the spotlight of your mind toward a new door. And soon, the world rearranges itself to match. The mistake is observing the current version of your life as if it's the ultimate truth. But it's not the truth. It's just a snapshot, a temporary hologram. It's the residue of yesterday's focus. And you're free to change the channel at any time. But that requires something most people never practice: inner observation. Not observing the outer world for confirmation, but observing the inner world to see what's broadcasting beneath your awareness. Your current life is not proof of what's possible. It's only proof of where your attention has been. That's why, when you get stuck in cycles that feel endless, the temptation is to push harder against what you see, but what you resist you feed. Every ounce of energy spent fighting the wrong reality anchors you deeper into it. That's why frustration becomes a loop. You're trying to escape a version of reality by fighting it, but in doing so, you're giving it more energy than ever before. Think of a foggy mirror in a bathroom. You can stand there and shout at the fog, you can beg for it to clear, or you can simply wipe it away. The fog is not permanent. It's just a layer distorting what's underneath. Your outer world is that fog, and you've been staring at it for too long. The shift begins the moment you stop reacting to the mirror and start creating the image. Not with empty affirmations that feel fake, not with forced positivity, but with a genuine decision to change the channel, to stop identifying with the version of yourself that's trapped in the wrong reality. Because here's the truth most people never fully accept: your identity is the gatekeeper. The version of you that you believe yourself to be determines which door you even notice, which opportunities you see, which synchronicities unfold. If your identity says, this is just the way it is, you'll keep walking through the same repeating corridors. But if your identity shifts to, I choose to see differently. New corridors light up. You can't out-hustle a limiting identity. You can't outwork a belief system that's set to the wrong frequency. You can only shift. And that shift is internal first. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. But it's real. It begins with a quiet but powerful decision. I'm done observing the wrong reality. I'm done giving my energy to reflections of who I no longer want to be. I choose to see something else. And yes, at first, the old reality will still echo. Like a bell after it's been struck, it won't go silent immediately. But if you hold your focus, not with strain but with certainty, the echoes fade. A new frequency stabilizes. And then, as if by magic, the outer world rearranges itself to match the new observation. But it isn't magic, it's mechanics. The way you observe determines the version of reality that collapses into your experience. This isn't mystical fluff. It's the quiet law underlying everything. Your observation is the paintbrush, your mind is the canvas, and your belief is the color. You've been holding the brush the entire time. You just forgot you were the painter. So the next time you catch yourself staring at a situation that feels immovable, ask yourself, am I observing the wrong reality? Am I waiting for the mirror to change? Or am I ready to change the image I'm projecting? Because when you stop waiting and start choosing, the world stops repeating itself. And the doors you couldn't see before suddenly start to open, not because they were never there, but because you finally turned your head to look. You're not trapped. You're just fixated on the wrong frequency. The moment you realize you've been observing the wrong reality is the moment your power begins to return to you, not in some explosive, dramatic way, but quietly, like the soft click of a key unlocking a door you forgot existed. You start noticing how automatic your reactions have been, how you've been living on autopilot, giving all your attention to the same old patterns, the same fears, the same storylines. And suddenly, it hits you, it wasn't reality that was holding you hostage. It was your loyalty to it. That loyalty shows up in subtle ways. It's in the way you speak about your life. It's in the way you explain your circumstances to others. It's in the way you keep expecting the same disappointments, the same results, the same cycles. And without realizing it, every time you retell that story, you reinforce the version of reality that no longer serves you. You make it more solid, more believable, more permanent, when in truth it was never permanent at all. The most dangerous cage is the one that feels familiar. Because familiarity tricks your mind into mistaking it for truth. You've walked the same path so many times that it feels like the only one. But just beyond the edges of your current focus lies a whole new landscape. One you haven't even touched yet. Not because it doesn't exist, but because you haven't given yourself permission to look. Here's the paradox that trips up so many people. You don't need to see evidence of the new reality to step into it. You need to stop worshiping the old one. You need to starve it of your energy, your words, your attention, because the reality you feed is the reality that grows. The moment you stop rehearsing the problem, you create space for new solutions to appear. Think about this. If you spend your days fixated on what's not working, your mind becomes a spotlight scanning the room for proof to confirm it. And because reality is flexible, it will give you exactly what you expect to find. You'll notice every obstacle, every slight delay, every inconvenience. You'll interpret neutral events through the lens of your old story, and you'll say, see, this is just how it always goes for me. But that's not evidence, it's bias. You're not seeing the truth. You're seeing through a filter that's been programmed by your focus. The shift isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about refusing to anchor yourself in what no longer deserves your attention. It's about consciously observing the version of reality that matches your desired identity, even before it fully takes shape. Because once you do, the world starts to echo back that new state. It doesn't happen overnight, but it begins the moment you shift. Imagine someone who's lived their whole life believing they're unlucky. They wake up expecting things to go wrong. They walk through their day scanning for signs that prove their belief. They bump into small inconveniences and say, I told you. But now imagine one quiet morning they pause. They decide to stop labeling themselves as unlucky. They don't need proof to believe. They just decide. And slowly they begin noticing different things. A kind smile from a stranger. A door opening when they needed it most. Little signs that were always there, but invisible to their old lens. Reality didn't change first. Their observation did. And here's where it gets even deeper. You are not just the observer. You're also the director. The moment you shift your state, everything else recalibrates around it. This is why two people can stand in the same situation and live two entirely different realities. One sees limitation, The other sees opportunity. One walks away discouraged. The other walks away inspired. The difference isn't the situation. It's the lens. Every reality you experience is filtered through the identity you're inhabiting in that moment. If you keep identifying with the version of yourself that's powerless, waiting, hoping, and reacting, you'll keep looping through the same storyline. But if you shift into the identity of the one who chooses, who observes consciously, who expects alignment rather than resistance, the entire script begins to change. Think of life as a massive stage. There are infinite plays being performed all at once. Each script already written, each character already in motion. You're not stuck in one play. You're just sitting in the same seat watching the same performance over and over again. But you can get up. You can walk to another theater. You can step into a new role. But that can only happen if you stop insisting that the current play is all there is. The people who create extraordinary change in their lives aren't special. They're simply the ones who stop observing reality passively and start shaping it actively. They become aware of their internal narratives. They catch themselves when they slip into old loops. They don't fight the old reality, they withdraw their energy from it. That's a power most people don't even know they have. The truth is, your outer world has no choice but to follow your inner one. It's not optional. It's not a maybe. It's a law. The frequencies match. The alignment happens. But you have to give it time. Just like a seed doesn't sprout the moment you plant it. Your new reality doesn't bloom the second you shift. But the moment you plant the new seed of observation, the countdown begins. The soil of reality starts to rearrange itself around the new signal. And here's where most people give up. They plant a seed one day, stare at the soil the next, and when nothing happens they dig it up and say, "See, it didn't work." But the ones who understand the mechanics of observation don't do that. They trust the process. They keep their focus aligned with the desired reality, even before it gives them proof. They don't need evidence. They are the evidence. You don't need to force the universe to change. You just need to stop arguing for the old version of it. Every complaint, every excuse, every explanation you repeat is an anchor tied to the reality you say you want to leave. If you keep telling people how stuck you are, how unlucky you are, how hard it is, you're pouring cement around the old version. But the moment you change the story, even in small ways, the old cement starts to crack. Start small, observe differently, notice something good, even if it's tiny. Not to fake it, but to genuinely train your mind to look in a new direction. The more you do, the more momentum you build. It's not about giant leaps at first. It's about quiet, consistent shifts that eventually cause the whole landscape to change. Reality isn't stubborn. It's responsive. But it responds to who you're being, not what you're begging for. So if you keep showing up as the one who's waiting, life will mirror more waiting. But if you show up as the one who chooses, the world mirrors choice. When you grasp this deeply, you stop being a passive character in your own story. You stop reacting to every plot twist as if it's carved in stone. You begin to see yourself as the author holding the pen. And the more you hold that pen with certainty, the more the old script fades, and a new one begins to write itself through your actions, your emotions, and your unwavering focus. You've been observing the wrong reality not because you're broken, but because no one ever taught you how to look. But now you know. And once you know, you can't unknow it. There comes a point when observing the wrong reality isn't just disempowering, it becomes exhausting. You wake up carrying the weight of old narratives, playing out the same scenes in your mind like a movie you've already memorized. And even though part of you wants out, another part clings to what's familiar. But real transformation doesn't come from waiting for life to change. It comes from recognizing that your loyalty to a tired version of reality has kept you from stepping into a new one. Every person who has ever broken free from their limitations reached a breaking point. A quiet moment where they said, "Enough." That moment isn't loud. It's not a thunderclap. It's a soft but irreversible decision to stop giving energy to the wrong frequency. And in that silence, something begins to shift. The grip of the old reality starts to listen, not because the world suddenly becomes easy, but because your perception stops feeding the story that made it hard. The wrong reality feeds on your attention like a parasite. The more you narrate it, the more it thrives. But the moment you go silent, the moment you stop narrating pain as your personal identity, the story loses its power. It fades. Slowly at first, then all at once. You've probably felt this before in small ways. A moment where a problem that seemed insurmountable suddenly became irrelevant. Not because the external world fixed itself, but because something inside of you changed. That shift is not random. It's proof. Proof that what you observe becomes what you live. And when you change your inner stance, even the most stubborn circumstances bend to meet the new version of you. Here's the truth most people overlook. You're never trapped in reality itself. You're trapped in the perspective that built it. And perspective is fluid. It's moldable. You can drop one perspective and pick up another in an instant. But because people have repeated their story for so long, they've mistaken it for their identity. And that's why they stay stuck. If you keep saying, "This is just who I am," you're handcuffing yourself to a reality that doesn't need to be permanent. If you keep thinking, "This is just the way life is," you're locking the door and throwing away the key. But the door isn't locked from the outside. It's unlocked. It always has been. You've just been standing with your hand on the handle, too convinced by the reflection in front of you to turn it. Let's strip it all down. The wrong reality thrives on reaction. It needs you to keep reacting so it can keep existing. But the right reality, the one aligned with your highest self, doesn't demand your reaction. It requires your decision, and decisions are quiet. They don't scream. They resonate. They ripple. The moment you choose to stop observing your life as a victim of circumstance and start observing as the creator of it, the ground beneath your feet begins to rearrange. People appear differently. Opportunities emerge where walls used to stand. Doors open where before there were only blank walls. This isn't a metaphor. It's how perception alters possibility. You don't have to fix everything to step into the right reality. You just have to stop worshiping the wrong one. You have to stop feeding it with your energy, your language, your expectations. If you stop watering the weeds, the garden can finally grow. And yes, at first, the old reality will try to pull you back, not because it's powerful, but because it's familiar. It will whisper old stories into your ear. It will show you old patterns. It will try to convince you that nothing's changing, but your job isn't to argue with it. Your job is to observe differently. To keep your gaze fixed on the reality you've chosen, not the one that's fading. The wrong reality is like a mirage. It looks solid when you're fixated on it. But the moment your attention shifts, it starts to dissolve. The problem is, most people panic in that in-between space. The old reality is fading, the new one hasn't fully formed, and they mistake that void for failure. But it's not failure. It's the space where creation happens. The void is your canvas. That's where you get to decide who you are now, not who you were yesterday, not who you were when you believed the old story, but who you choose to be right now. This is the single most powerful moment in the entire process. The moment where you choose observation over reaction. It's uncomfortable. It can feel like standing in silence after years of noise, but that silence is fertile. It's where you reclaim your authorship. And when you stand in that space long enough, the new reality begins to assemble around you, not as a miracle, but as a reflection of the new frequency you've stabilized. And that's when something extraordinary happens. The same world that once felt like a trap starts responding to you differently. People you thought would never change begin treating you differently. Circumstances rearrange. The right doors begin to show up, not because they were never there, but because you finally turned your head and saw them. You begin to understand that you were never stuck in the mirror. You were stuck in how you looked at it. And this understanding isn't temporary. Once it lands, it can't be unseen. Once you know you're the observer, you realize you were never powerless. The reality you observe doesn't define you. You define the reality you observe. That's the moment you stop needing permission. You stop begging for signs. You stop asking if it's possible. You know it is, because you've experienced the mechanics. You've seen how your focus shapes your world. And from that point forward, your life stops being a series of reactions and starts becoming a deliberate act of creation. You don't need to force it. You don't need to control every detail. All you need to do is choose the right reality to observe and stay loyal to it. Not out of desperation, but out of certainty. The right reality is already here. It's not waiting to be built. It's waiting to be seen. It's standing quietly in the corner of your perception, ready to unfold the moment you give it your attention. And once you do, the old version no longer stands a chance. You'll look back one day and realize that nothing around you really changed first. You changed. You stopped looking at your life through the fog of fear and doubt. You stopped repeating the same tired script. You picked up the pen and started writing a new one. And reality, like a mirror, had no choice but to reflect it back. The wrong reality isn't your enemy. It's just the echo of an old version of you. And once you stop listening to the echo, the silence gives way to something greater. So here's the truth wrapped in its simplest form: when you observe the wrong reality, It grows. When you observe the right one, it unfolds. This is your invitation, not to wait, not to wish, to choose. Because the moment you choose to stop observing the wrong reality, you start living the right one.